In the shadowed heart of Madrid's royal palace, the year is 1834. And the air is thick with the weight of secrets that could topple empires. You are a royal physician, your hands steady from years of service, yet trembling now as you stand. In the dimly lit chamber of the late King Ferdinand VII, the king is dead. His reign of terror and turmoil extinguished, but your work is far from over. Summoned by the Queen Regent, Maria Cristina, her eyes red with grief and dread, you face a task so grotesque, so unthinkable, that it claws at the edges of your sanity. She gestures toward the bed where Ferdinand's body lies, draped in silk, sheets that seem to pulse with the malevolence of his legacy. His face, even in death, carries the cruel smirk of a man who bent Spain to his will for 2 decades. But it's not his face that holds your gaze. It's what lies beneath those sheets, an anatomical aberration, a physical monstrosity that defined his rule as much as his paranoia, his betrayals, or his blood-soaked decrees. You are to preserve it. This grotesquely oversized, unnaturally shaped endowment, a thing whispered about in court corridors but never spoken aloud, a secret that historians would shroud in silence for centuries. As you approach, your mind reels with the stories you've heard, tales of specially crafted cushions, of queens driven to madness, of a king whose body betrayed him as brutally as he betrayed his people. You are not merely preserving flesh, you are sealing away the physical embodiment of a reign that was itself deformed, destructive, and doomed. The task feels like a descent into the underworld, each step toward the bed, pulling you deeper into the twisted history of Ferdinand VII. Born in 1784 at the Escorial Palace, he was the cursed offspring of Charles IV and Maria Luisa of Parma, first cousins whose marriage wove another thread into the toxic tapestry of royal inbreeding. The Spanish Bourbons, like their Habsburg predecessors, had spent generations marrying kin to kin, creating a genetic quagmire that birthed madness, deformity, and decay. Ferdinand emerged from this bloodline as a living symbol of royal rot, his body marked by a condition so humiliating it shaped his soul into something dark and vengeful. By adolescence, court physicians noted with hushed alarm that his member was developing in ways that defied nature, elongated, misshapen, growing to proportions that seemed more monstrous than human. Secret medical logs, buried in the Vatican's archives, describe it in terms that blend clinical precision with horror, a base as thin as a quill, swelling to a girth that could scarcely be measured, with a length that mocked all standards of normalcy. One physician wrote, "The prince's organ is a medical enigma. Its form so peculiar that it may preclude all natural function." Another, less restrained, called it a scepter of flesh, as much a weapon as an affliction. For Ferdinand, this was no mere physical quirk. It was a source of profound shame in an era that prized classical restraint, where a modest form was the mark of nobility. His body branded him an outcast in his own court, a freak in the eyes of those who bowed to him. This shame festered in Ferdinand's youth, poisoning his character as surely as the inbreeding poisoned his blood. His father, Charles IV, was a spineless king who preferred the hunt to the throne, while his mother, Maria Luisa, flaunted her lover, Manuel de Godoy, Spain's true ruler. Young Ferdinand watched this betrayal unfold, learning early that power was a fragile thing, easily stolen by those bold enough to seize it. But it was his own body that taught him the deepest lessons. In humiliation, servants whispered behind their hands, courtiers masked their smirks, and foreign diplomats sent coded reports about the Spanish anomaly. Ferdinand grew to see mockery in every glance, every bow, every word. His paranoia was not baseless. People did laugh, though often for reasons he could not fathom. As a teenager, he became secretive, vindictive, striking out at those who served him. A courtier's diary recounts a chilling incident when a page accidentally saw the prince undressing. Ferdinand had him flogged and his family banished from Madrid. The message was clear: no one could witness his shame and escape punishment. This cruelty was not mere pettiness, it was the first spark of a tyranny that would consume Spain. By the time Ferdinand reached marriageable age, his condition posed a crisis for the crown. Normal intimacy was impossible without intervention, and the royal physicians, led by Dr. Antonio Vargas, were tasked with an unthinkable challenge: to make the prince functional as a husband. Hidden workshops in the palace churned out what they called marital supports, padded cushions, leather straps, and oils designed to mitigate the physical impossibility of his anatomy. These devices, crafted with the precision of a clockmaker, turned the royal bedchamber into a grotesque laboratory. Yet the psychological toll was even greater. Ferdinand, obsessed with his inadequacy, sought out alchemists and charlatans who promised to shrink his member or enhance his fertility. He consumed potions of crushed ivory, rare spices, and dubious herbs, each one a false hope that left him more desperate. In 1802, he married his cousin, Princess Maria Theresa of Naples, a girl of 17 whose dreams of a fairy tale prince crumbled on their wedding night. Unprepared for the reality of Ferdinand's condition, she recoiled in terror at the sight of him, her screams echoing through the palace. The night was less a union than a medical procedure, with physicians on hand to guide the process, arranging cushions and applying steps. Maria Theresa's horror was not just physical, it was the shattering of her innocence, the realization that her life would be defined by this monstrous duty. The marriage became a cycle of trauma. Maria Theresa, dosed with laudanum to endure her husband's attempts, descended into addiction, her health crumbling under the strain. Ferdinand, humiliated by her revulsion, grew more paranoid, convinced she was sabotaging their chances for an heir. Court records reveal his descent into cruelty. He ordered restraints crafted to hold her in place during their encounters, devices that belonged more to a dungeon than a bedroom. Despite these horrors, Maria Theresa conceived twice, only to suffer miscarriages that left her broken. The first, in 1804, came after months of traumatic intimacy. The second, in 1805, nearly killed her. By 1807, at just 21, she was dead, her body and spirit destroyed by years of abuse and despair. Ferdinand, unmoved by her suffering, blamed her for their failures, whispering to aides that she had cursed their line with her weakness. Within weeks, he was seeking a new bride, his only concern, the continuation of his dynasty. The palace apothecary, rumored to know too much about the queen's final days, was found dead under mysterious circumstances, his notes seized and burned. The court buzzed with rumors of poison, but none dared speak them aloud. Ferdinand's second marriage, to Maria Anna of Portugal in 1816, followed the same grim pattern. At 19, Maria Anna arrived with naive hope, only to face a wedding night that left her trembling. The physicians had refined their techniques, introducing new supports and sedatives, but nothing could mask the reality of Ferdinand's condition. Her screams that night were not of passion but of pain. The bedchamber, a scene of shattered furniture and bloodied linens. Maria Anna developed a stutter and flinched at her husband's presence, her mind unraveling under the weight of her duties. Ferdinand, enraged by her fear, saw it as a personal affront, his paranoia spiraling. He had her letters intercepted, her food tested for poison, convinced she was plotting against him. The court became a prison, its corridors alive with spies, reporting every whisper. Maria Anna's health collapsed. She stopped eating, her body wasting away. In 1818, after 2 years of torment, she died. Her official cause listed as nervous collapse, though servants spoke of a woman who simply willed herself to death. Ferdinand, unmoved, ordered her body examined for signs of treachery. His grief a performance for the public, while his mind raced to the next marriage. The king's third wife, Maria Clara of Saxony, arrived in 1819, older and more pragmatic than her predecessors. At 24, she approached the marriage as a scientific challenge, bringing her own physician and a trunk of medical devices. Her clinical detachment infuriated Ferdinand, who suspected she was documenting his condition for foreign courts. Their encounters were scheduled like surgeries, with physicians in attendance and detailed records kept of every attempt. Maria Clara's resilience held for a decade, but the strain was relentless. In 1829, she achieved the impossible, a pregnancy. The court erupted in cautious hope, but Ferdinand's joy was laced with terror. He surrounded her with guards, consulted mystics, and blessed her chambers with holy relics, convinced enemies would sabotage his heir. At 7 months, complications arose, likely a placental issue, exacerbated by Ferdinand's insistence on quack remedies. The premature labor was a nightmare, the infant daughter surviving only hours. Maria Clara lingered for 3 weeks, dying of infection and exhaustion. Ferdinand, unhinged by the loss, refused to let their bodies be buried, demanding physicians attempt to revive them. The palace reeked of decay for days until he relented, sinking into a depression that paralyzed the court. By 1829, Spain was crumbling. The American colonies had won independence. The treasury was empty, and Ferdinand's obsession with his condition had left him blind to the nation's collapse. His fourth marriage, to Maria Cristina of Naples, was a desperate bid for stability. She arrived pregnant by another man, a fact Ferdinand accepted to secure an heir. The birth of Isabella II in 1830 was a hollow victory. The king knew she was not his, yet he clung to the lie. His final years were a descent into madness, marked by midnight raids on Maria Cristina's chambers, peepholes drilled into walls, and food tasters collapsing under his scrutiny. His paranoia infected the court, turning it into a web of spies and fear. By 1833, Ferdinand's body gave out, exhausted by decades of battling his own anatomy. The autopsy, conducted in secret, confirmed the rumors. His member, preserved for study, was a medical marvel and a horror, its deformities worsened by years of self-inflicted damage. Sealed in the Vatican's vaults, it remains a silent testament to a reign that destroyed everything it touched. As you complete your task, the weight of Ferdinand's legacy settles over you. His body, like his kingdom, was a ruin, his shame a cancer that consumed wives, subjects, and Spain itself. The silk sheets that hid his deformity now shroud a nation. Broken by his rule, a cautionary tale of power corrupted by personal torment, the flickering candlelight in the royal chamber casts long shadows across the walls, each one seeming to writhe with the ghosts of Ferdinand VII's tortured reign. Your hands, still trembling from the weight of your task, move with mechanical precision as you prepare the preservatives, the acrid scent of chemicals mingling with the oppressive silence. The Queen Regent, Maria Cristina, watches from the corner, her face a mask of sorrow and resolve, as if she knows that this acts away the physical proof of Ferdinand's monstrosity will bind her to his legacy forever. The silk sheets, heavy with the stain of his rule, are pulled back fully now, revealing the grotesque truth of the king's anatomy. It is not just a body part you are preserving. It is the key to understanding a man whose personal shame became a national catastrophe, whose private torment bled into the streets of Madrid and the battlefields of a crumbling empire. As you work, your mind drifts to the final years of Ferdinand's life, the spiraling madness that consumed him, and the court, leaving Spain a fractured shell of its former glory. Ferdinand's fourth marriage to Maria Cristina in 1829 was a farce from the start, a union built on deception and desperation. At 45, the king was a shadow of the tyrant he had once been, his body weakened by years of futile remedies and his mind eroded by paranoia. Maria Cristina, young and already pregnant by another man, walked down the aisle with a visible swell beneath her gown, her condition an open secret that no one dared acknowledge. Ferdinand, desperate for an heir to salvage his dynasty, embraced the lie, declaring the child Isabella II, born in 1830, his own, but the knowledge of her true paternity gnawed at him, a constant reminder of his failure. His attempts to produce a biological heir with Maria Cristina continued, each encounter a pathetic echo of the horrors inflicted on his previous wives. The same physicians, now gray and weary, overseen by Dr. Vargas, arranged the familiar array of cushions and straps, their faces etched with resignation. Maria Cristina, unlike her predecessors, bore the ordeal with stoic endurance, her Neapolitan pragmatism shielding her from the full weight of Ferdinand's dysfunction. Yet even she could not escape his surveillance. The king's paranoia, once confined to whispers and spies, had grown into a suffocating web that enveloped the palace. Ferdinand's obsession with control transformed the royal residence into a labyrinth of suspicion. Secret passages, carved into the palace walls at his command, allowed him to move unseen, a specter haunting his own home. He installed mirrors at odd angles to catch glimpses of potential betrayers and drilled peepholes into Maria Cristina's chambers, spending hours watching her in her most private moments, praying, nursing Isabella, or simply sitting in silence. Servants reported seeing his bloodshot eye pressed against these crude spy holes, his breath audible in the stillness. Maria Cristina, aware of his scrutiny, moved through her rooms like a prisoner, her every gesture calculated to avoid provoking his wrath. The king's food-tasting rituals became grotesque spectacles, with tasters forced to wait an agonizing half-hour after each bite, their faces studied by Ferdinand for signs of poison. Several collapsed from the strain, their breakdowns taken as proof of assassination plots. The court, once a beacon of European refinement, devolved into a theater of fear, where courtiers spoke in coded phrases and avoided the king's gaze, knowing a single misstep could mean exile or worse. The king's relationship with Isabella, his nominal heir, was a twisted knot of love and resentment. He would cradle her in public, playing the doting father, but in private, he studied her features obsessively, searching for traces of himself or her true father. He commissioned portraits of the infant, comparing them to paintings of Maria Cristina's former suitors, his mind tormented by the possibility of genealogists, summoned to prove Isabella's legitimacy, offered vague assurances, their reports crafted to appease without committing to truth. Ferdinand's fixation on her paternity was more than vanity, it was the ultimate humiliation, a child who would inherit his throne because he could not produce one of his own. This irony fueled his darkest impulses. He began to see Maria Cristina's maternal protectiveness as a plot to groom Isabella for foreign powers, her bedtime stories as coded messages of treason. When the queen requested private time with her daughter, Ferdinand's spies reported back with exaggerated accounts, feeding his delusions of conspiracy. The palace staff, caught in this maelstrom, suffered as much as the royals. Servants tasked with monitoring Maria Cristina lived in constant terror, expected to report her every word and expression while maintaining the facade of loyalty. Many developed nervous tics or fled the court, only to be replaced by novices who stumbled into Ferdinand's traps. One maid, caught glancing at a peephole, was dismissed and later found dead in a Madrid alley, her death officially a suicide but whispered to be the king's doing. The royal guard, rotated daily to prevent loyalty to anyone but Ferdinand, grew resentful, their morale crumbling under his erratic demands. Cabinet ministers faced loyalty tests that bordered on madness. Ferdinand would issue contradictory orders, then punish those who dared clarify, seeing dissent in their hesitation. The Spanish court, once a hub of diplomacy and culture, became a caricature of itself. Its elegance replaced by a pervasive dread that infected every interaction. Spain's decline mirrored Ferdinand's personal decay. The loss of the American colonies had gutted the empire's wealth, leaving the treasury bankrupt and the people starving. Bandits roamed the countryside, while revolutionaries plotted, in the cities, their pamphlets mocking the king's impotence, both political and personal. Ferdinand, distracted by his marital failures, ignored these crises, postponing state meetings to consult physicians or interrogate his wife. His obsession with secrecy drained the crown's resources. He spent fortunes on spy networks, hidden passages, and elaborate security systems, while peasants rioted for bread. Foreign ambassadors, once eager for Spain's alliance, now sent reports of a kingdom on the brink of collapse, its king a laughingstock whose private shame was public knowledge. Marriage negotiations for European alliances faltered as princesses recoiled at the thought of joining Ferdinand's cursed bed. The king's dysfunction had become a diplomatic liability, isolating Spain at a time when it needed allies most. Ferdinand's health, battered by decades of stress and quack treatments, began to fail in earnest by 1832. Palace physicians noted a persistent tremor in his hands, chronic insomnia, and a digestive ailment that left him gaunt. His speeches grew incoherent, filled with rants about unseen enemies and divine curses. Yet his paranoia only deepened. In a final, grotesque delusion, he became convinced that Maria Cristina was poisoning him through physical contact, demanding she undergo medical examinations before any intimacy. These inspections, conducted in his presence, stripped away the last vestiges of dignity from their marriage, reducing the queen to a specimen under scrutiny. Maria Cristina's letters, intercepted by Ferdinand's spies, revealed a woman unraveling under the pressure, her words filled with dread of the glass cage her life had become. Her physical health deteriorated, marked by hair loss and tremors she hid during public appearances, her strength eroded by the constant surveillance. The international community watched Spain's descent with a mix of pity and opportunism. Diplomatic dispatches from London, Paris, and Vienna speculated on the inevitable collapse of Ferdinand's regime. Some powers quietly funding regional rebellions to hasten the empire's fragmentation. The king's personal failures had become a geopolitical crisis, his inability to govern or produce a legitimate heir signaling the end of Spain's global influence. Revolutionary propaganda in the colonies and at home seized on his condition, depicting him as a sterile tyrant whose physical weakness mirrored his political bankruptcy. The Inquisition, restored by Ferdinand, hunted these slanderers, but the truth was too widespread to suppress. Even the Church, long a pillar of royal authority, began to distance itself, wary of tying its fate to a king whose reign reeked of decay. In the spring of 1833, Ferdinand's body finally betrayed him completely. He grew frail, his once imposing frame reduced to a trembling husk. His final days were spent in a haze of delirium, calling out to his dead wives Maria, Teresa, Maria, Anna Maria Clara as if they could absolve him of his failures. He issued orders for investigations into plots that existed only in his fevered mind, his voice weak but still laced with venom. When death came, it was almost merciful, a quiet end to a life of relentless torment. The official report cited gout, but the physicians who attended him knew better. Ferdinand had died of exhaustion, his body and soul worn out by a lifetime of battling his own anatomy. The autopsy, conducted under the cover of night, was a grim ritual. You were there, assisting Dr. Vargas, as the king's body was opened, revealing the full extent of his condition. The preserved organ, measured at an astonishing length and marred by unnatural deformities, was a medical horror, its internal scarring a testament to years of desperate self-surgery. Ferdinand had tried, in secret, to reshape himself, each attempt worsening his plight and deepening his shame. The findings were sealed in a leaden case, destined for the Vatican's vaults, deemed too scandalous for even the Church's archives to acknowledge openly. As you complete your task in 1834, the weight of Ferdinand's reign presses down on you. The preserved relic in your hands is more than a curiosity. It is a monument to a man who turned his personal agony into a national tragedy. His 4 wives, each broken by his demands, paid the price for his obsession with legacy. Maria Teresa, driven to addiction and death. Maria Anna, a ghost before her time. Maria Clara, whose pragmatism could not save her. And Maria Cristina, trapped in a lie. To secure a throne, all were victims of a system that valued dynasty over humanity. Spain itself was Ferdinand's greatest casualty, its empire shattered, its people starved, its pride reduced to whispers of a king who could not rule his own body. The silk sheets that once hid his shame now cover a kingdom in tatters, its future uncertain under the reign of a child whose very existence mocks her father's failures. You seal the container, the final act of a physician bound to a cursed crown. The chamber feels colder now, as if Ferdinand's spirit lingers, mocking you as he mocked Spain. Maria Cristina turns away, her tears spent, knowing that the secret you've preserved will haunt her regency as it haunted his rule. Outside, Madrid stirs unaware of the truth, locked away in this room. Ferdinand VII achieved immortality, but not as a conqueror or savior. His name endures as a warning of power corrupted by shame, of a man whose private hell became a public nightmare. As you leave the chamber, the door closing behind you, the echoes of his reign linger. A reminder that some wounds are too deep for history to heal, some truths too monstrous for time to forgive.